Hello.
Hey Steve, it's Dennis from the Australian Rock Show. How are you?
Good, Dennis. How you doing?
Look, I'm very well. Let's start by talking about the new record, Renegades. And, you know, I'm in a good mood, and this is because we, in fact, kicked this show off with the glorious track called Crawl. What can you tell me about that one? I really like the na vocals throughout the song. I think they work really, really well.
Oh, great. I'm glad you like that track. I do too. We thought it was a great opening track for us to release as the first single because it just has such a great groove. The whole song has such a great groove to it. And, you know, I tell you what, that's a song that Kelly Nichols brought in. We all write together, but we all bring in the gist of a song into the pre-production and then finish it together. But that's one of Kelly Nichols' songs. And it came up pretty late in the whole pre-production, too. And it just turned out terrific. And the groove on it was just unmistakable. And, you know, it's one of those songs, man, I guess, you know, those rock songs that describes a relationship that kind of went sour and how somebody's going to just carry on after that. And Kelly wrote it kind of late in the game. And like I said, we were just thrilled when he brought that idea in.
Now, Crawl is one of 3 tracks recently released by the band, along with Well-Oiled Machine and the amazing title track. Most of the comments I've read from fans online about the new material is positive, which must be pleasing.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the thing is we know that, especially me and Cal, we've been in the business for so long that we know everybody's not going to like it, you know, what we do. But we're so really thrilled with how well the response has been to everything we've done so far, all 3 singles. We feel like, you know, the response has been so positive, and each track just alone on Spotify has streamed 150,000. So just on the 3 singles, we got like over 500,000 streams on those, and that's a really good positive sign that the fans dig it. And of course, you know, there's going to be those other guys out there that just don't like it, and we can dig that. That's cool. We understand.
I see you have got your longtime rhythm partner, Kelly Nichols, back on board with bassist Scott Griffin, who's had a couple of stints in the band and has now switched back to guitar.
Scotty Griffin, yeah. Scotty is, you know, because obviously when Kelly decided to come back and play, obviously he's my battery mate, and we were the rhythm section from the very beginning with L.A Guns. And so that right there puts Scotty Griffin in a position because Scotty was smart. He took the gig with L.A Guns as the bass player, even though he's the lead guitar player, but he took the gig as a bass player because we were working so much and we were touring so much and recording, and he jumped in, and it was just a really smart move. He played bass really, really well and sang background vocals. But when we started this thing with Kelly, yeah, he knew right away. He was thinking, it was funny because he thought he was out because, you know, he didn't realize that I was going to call him and tell him, Scotty, because I had recorded with Scotty too while he was the bass player, and in pre-production, he had picked up the guitar, and I knew he was a guitar player, but I didn't ever really realize how good he was until doing those previous albums with him and the tours. And I called him up and I said, Scotty, listen, do you want to play guitar in this band, play lead guitar? And he was just bowled over. He was like, absolutely. I said, I know you can do it, man. You're a great guitar player. So he jumped in feet first, and he was just so thrilled to be the guitar player again, playing guitar. And I think he did a really, really good job on the album, man. And he brought in some material. He brought in Lost Boys, and he's just really just a well-rounded musician.
Well, one of my favourite tracks here is titled Wood. Really melodic, and one that shows Kurt's vocal ability. Just love that.
Right. I mean, because I tell you what, we did this in a very weird fashion, bro. We when we started doing this in the summer of 2019 last year, we all live all over the States. I live in L.A., Kelly's in New York, Kurt is in Florida, and Scotty's in Las Vegas. So, it was very difficult for all of us to get together because the budgets are so tight right now. So we did something unusual. We started trading songs over the internet and showing what we were all sitting on. And we had like about 35 songs that we shot back and forth, the four of us, because we're all songwriters. And Kurt brought in wood. That's one of Kurt's songs he had been sitting on. And he has his own home studio. So when he sent that to us, I was just like, wow, this is insane. This is such a great track. It might not be a single because it's a little bit long and everything, but it is such a great album track. And the way he wrote it, it was pretty much done. We did a little bit of work on it. We had to cut it down a little bit because I produced the album. So I realized that it was a little too long and a little long in the tooth, but we cut it down just a little bit, and we added some stuff to it to sweeten it up. But he handed that song in, Dennis, and it was, I couldn't believe it. I was like, Kurt, this thing is amazing. And so when we got to record it and put it down, it was just, I was so happy with the way it turned out. I think it's just a killer track.
Well, Steve, I'm going to disagree with you. I think it would make a great single, and I reckon you'd be surprised by the fan response if you did release it as a single. But, you know, there were a few negative comments from fans online when this new lineup was announced, but, you know, there'll always be some negativity out there. And Steve, nothing silences negativity quite like loud, catchy rock and roll songs, does it?
Right, you know, and the thing is that, you know, when me and Kelly, we're two of the classic members. We co-wrote all of the material from the early days. You know, all five of us wrote those Never Enough and Ballad. You know, Kelly brought in Ballad of Jane. That's one of his songs. So he's a really prolific songwriter, and we all wrote and co-wrote all of the early material. So, you know, when Kelly and I decided to do this, we knew that the other guys were out and they were doing their thing. And they had started doing their thing as Tracy and Phil from L.A. Guns, and they weren't actually going out as L.A. Guns until like later on in their deal. So, you know, Kelly and I, we just feel confident that we are L.A. Guns. And two, you know, I mean, it's unmistakable. We co-wrote the songs, we're classic members, and had been in it right from the very beginning. So we knew there was going to be some negativity. But, you know, Dennis, nowadays, too, in a classic rock band, it's so hard to keep the original members together. A number of bands are going through what we are, and it's just something that you got to deal with. And if you have confidence and you feel good about the band, the players in the band, and the writers in the band, because everything starts with the songs. It doesn't matter how flashy you are, whatever. If you don't have the songs, you don't have shit. So we knew we had the songs, and so we have so much confidence in that. And then finishing the album, we knew we had something really special here. So there's a lot of confidence in what we're doing right now, and we just got to face off that negativity from some of the people and just deal with it.
Well, the track we're going to close this show out with is the title track from the album. Some nice harmonies on that one and a great guitar solo too. Steve, in one way or another, whether we are musicians or rock fans, we all have the renegade inside us, don't we? It's a part of rock and roll, rejecting conventional behavior and lifestyle.
That's right. That's right, brother. And that song right there really describes the situation with the band and with how you really are a renegade and you're a nomad on the road, and how you have to deal with relationships because you have to split for so long and be away. And then, you know, the fact that you pretty much are a renegade in rock and roll, and not just band members, rock fans too. They're renegades too. And I think it's always been like that too. Not to sound corny or anything, but I really believe that. I believe that rock fans, even nowadays, even though it's so hard to get a rock thing off the ground because of the situation with record companies and managers and big machines, those are all gone now. But I still believe rock fans and rock bands, we're all renegades. We really are.
Steve, you just mentioned that you produced Renegades. Whilst we're talking about producers, I'm going to hit you with a related question, and it's one I often ask musicians. So you've been in the business a long time and worked with many producers. Spencer Proffer, who did Wasp's Last Command, comes to mind. Tom Werman and Jim Faraci, who did the early L.A Guns records. Michael James Jackson did Hollywood Vampires. Right. As a musician, how vital a role is that of the producer, do you think? And I guess what are you hoping they bring to the overall sound?
Well, you know what, Dennis, it brings a lot because I started recording. I'm a little bit older than everybody in this band. I'm older than them, and I had started recording when I was 19, and in '75 I did an album with Todd Rundgren producing it. That was with Roadmaster, and it was in 1975. It came out in '76, and Todd Rundgren produced that. So I worked with Todd Rundgren. Tom Werman, Michael James Jackson. I worked with Michael Wagner and Gene Simmons, and I did 4 albums with Andy Johns. So I really soaked it up. I stayed in the studio with these guys while we were doing these albums, watched them work on them and see how they approached the musicians, how they approached the engineers, and how they approached the room itself. And so I really soaked up a lot of knowledge from these guys. I was very fortunate to work with so many good producers, and I love all of them too. I just loved working with everybody I just mentioned. And Andy Johns, doing 4 albums with Andy Johns right in a row was so valuable, because I went into this project using the same studio, the same engineer that Andy used, and the same approach that pretty much Andy would have done. And I think I would have even asked Andy to produce this if he didn't pass away, and that was a real big blow. He was such a good friend, and I probably would have approached him to produce this album, but I just told Kelly, I want to do it. I just want to produce the album. I want to put the whole thing together. And I really did draw on all of those experiences working with those guys. There's no doubt about it.
Steve, I am going to dig into your past a little if I can. You first came to my attention in the mid-1980s with WASP via magazines like Hit Parader and Metal Edge. And in fact, and I know this as I attended a Blackie Lawless in-store in late 1985, and he mentioned it, WASP were slated to tour Australia in 1986, which never happened. Does that ring any bells?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Because we never got to make it over there, the original band,
sure,
with me, Chris, Blackie, and Randy Piper. And we were set to do an Australian tour, and I don't know why it fell through. It might have been because we had another tour presented to us with Iron Maiden, and we were managed by the same people, Rod Smallwood and those guys. And so that might have been the reason why WASP didn't go over there. And it was a shame, too, because the original WASP should have gone to Australia. It was such a good band. Dennis, I really, really wish that band, the original guys, the 4 of us, had never broken up. I thought we were a great band, and I thought we were great not only theatrically, we sounded and played great, and we had some great material, and I just wish we'd got to go over to Australia and New Zealand, and it was in the cards, but for some reason it fell out, and it might have been because we were doing that circus. I think it was the Electric Circus tour. I'm not sure. And it could have been the end of the Last Command tour, but we were slated, and I think something happened where Rod Smallwood wanted us to go out with Maiden in either Europe or North America, and that's why that got nixed, I think.
Okay. Steve, I want to run something past you. Around 84, 85, and I say this with personal experience, I don't think any other band, with the exception of maybe Motley and Twisted Sister, had managed to identify with suburban teenagers quite like WASP did. You know, you were a heavy metal hero, part of a band who spoke to disenchanted kids everywhere. Do you ever think back and reflect on that?
Oh, I do, big time, bro, because like I said, I was so disappointed when I thought the band really, really had something going. We were connected to the fans and connected to the the young kids in a really good way. And I thought that I was so disappointed when Blackie fired Randy Piper, because when that happened after the Last Command tour, it changed the dynamics of the band completely. And we had Blackie now on guitar, and we had Johnny Rod on bass, and both of them are terrific musicians. But the whole identity of the band changed. That dual lead guitar that Chris and Randy had, that second vocal that Randy Piper was singing behind Blackie, that was all gone. So the whole dynamics of the band changed drastically. And we went in, and did Electric Circus. And at that same time, that was when I also felt a little bit strange about the band changing its look too. I thought we should have stayed a little bit darker like we were, instead of going a full-on, I guess when Motley Crue did Theater of Pain, and the glam looks started right with that record, that real glam look with sparkles and tight outfits, and we kind of followed suit in that. And I didn't think that we should really go that direction. I didn't have much say in it, really, because Blackie was pretty much calling the shots. But I think that's when a lot of things changed with WASP. We got rid of Randy, big mistake, and then we changed our looks and lightened up the look a little bit too much. And we might have lost connection with the fans at that point too, because I thought the first album and Last Command, we were connected to the fans at the hips, and we were we were striking a really good chord with them. And I agree with you. I think that we had a great relationships with the fans.
Back in the day, I owned that Live at the Lyceum show on VHS and wore that thing out. You'd not been in the band long before flying over to the UK for those shows, had you?
No, because similar things happened to me in WASP and L.A. Guns. When WASP was in the studio doing their first album, I was in the studio with Gene Simmons doing the Keel album, The Right to Rock. And so we were recording at the same time. And so Blackie had heard that I didn't have much time, and I really didn't have much time to prepare for Keel, but I knew that I could do it. And and when I went down and played for them, they asked me to join right away. And they were going to go in and do the album with Gene Simmons, and they were on A&M Records, and it was a really, really good deal they had, and I thought the band was great, and they had a lot of really good steam going on in L.A., just like WASP did. And so I was doing The Right to Rock while they were doing the first album. After I finished doing my drum tracks for The Right to Rock, I did the background vocals on that album with Gene Simmons, and I got a call from Blackie saying that, can I come over and meet him? And he wanted to play the first album for me. And he said that they were leaving for Europe in 3 weeks. And I said, okay. And so he said, do you want to do it? And so I had a real big decision to make, because Keel had something really good going. I was working with Gene Simmons. And so I think in hindsight, I made the right decision, but I didn't have much time. I had to jump right into a new mode, because WASP had this real theatrical look, and I knew that they had this big, big stage thing going on. And so I just had to jump in really fast and do 2 weeks of rehearsal here in L.A. And then we went out and I think we rented out what did we rent out? We rented out a big room in London to rehearse for another week. So I had like about 3 weeks to prepare to get on the stage for that Lyceum show. And I look back at that Lyceum show as one of the best things I've ever done. I really do. I think that it was absolutely the best WASP show that was ever done too. I think that it was just off those charts, and we took that show throughout Europe and into Japan, but we didn't take it back to North America. We stopped doing the blood and the girl on the rack and all of this stuff and the meat. We didn't do that. I wish we had done that through the whole first tour, but I think that Lyceum show is top notch. I look back on it. I revisit it once in a while and watch it, And I just think
Yeah.
that, man, we
It's
really,
insane.
really captured an amazing show.
Steve, I'm not sure when you relocated to Los Angeles, had you seen Blackie in his pre-WASP outfits like Sister or Circus Circus?
Yes, I did. You know, I came out here in '77,
Right.
and when I came out here, there was a bunch of us hanging at the Rainbow, and we were all waiting for our chance to get signed or see where we were all going to go. A lot of us didn't know each other, but we saw each other. And Blackie was there, Frankie Bonelli, Nikki Sixx, Piercy was there. I mean, a lot of people, you know, they're just hanging. Randy Rhoads, all of them we were hanging at the Rainbow, and we were playing in different club bands around town, and we were just waiting for our chance to get something going. And it's so funny because all of us really did get something going at some point. But I see Blackie and his pre-thing. I didn't get to see them live, but I saw his posters and his flyers and everything everywhere. And obviously I saw him a lot over at the Rainbow. And but I didn't really get to know who he was. He was like one of the other guys that were hanging there every night with me. And we were just like I said, waiting for our chance. Van Halen had just come out, and you know, we were waiting. And when that door opened with Quiet Riot in '82, we all got signed, and we were off and running.
Wonderful stories. Surely you'd have to have a book in you. You know, you've got wonderful, wonderful stories. There was a fan-produced book on WASP called Sting in the Tail. So it makes me wonder if you have plans to one day put your story down in print.
You know what? I got so many stories too, man. Check this out. Because Eddie Van Halen just passed away. Rest in peace, because he's just a giant in this business. And when I came out here in '77, I came out here to join a band called Empire, and it was with Mickey Jones, the bass player from Angel. And I had grown up with the guys on the East Coast with Angel. Me and Frank Domino, the singer, we grew up in Boston together. We've known each other since we were very, very young. And so when I was playing in Roadmaster in that Todd Rundgren produced record, we were in Indianapolis. That's where I was living. Mickey Jones had just gotten released from Angel, and he called me up and said, "Do you want to come out here?" And so I did immediately, because I knew this is where I had to end up. And so I left Roadmaster. They were really close. Angel and Van Halen were really close. Van Halen kind of looked up to Angel because Angel was signed to Casablanca and Van Halen was still looking for a record deal. They were playing clubs. So Mickey was really close with Eddie Van Halen. And when I came out here, it's the weirdest thing, because all of these things flooded back to me when Eddie passed away. Eddie and me and Mickey Jones hung out a bunch of times, and Eddie actually came by my apartment with Mickey, and Eddie was driving an old brown van that Van Halen used to haul their equipment around town in. And the three of us went to Starwood. Check this out. It's the weirdest story. The three of us, me, Mickey Jones from Angel, and Eddie Van Halen, went to the Starwood. We smoked a bunch of doobs and had a bunch of drinks, and we watched Quiet Riot with Randy Rhoads.
Wow.
And can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Because both of those guys went on to be legends. And I actually asked Eddie, I said, because I saw Randy just burning on stage. He was just off the charts. He was so good. And I asked Eddie, I said, "What do you think of this guy?" And he was like, "He's okay." You know, it's just the weirdest story, because then I got to see Eddie. He invited us to go see him play the first album over at the Whiskey, and it just blew the roof off. And he also invited me to go out to see Pasadena at Civic Auditorium, and that's one of their legendary shows before they released the album. So I really had this whole little thing going with Eddie before he became huge. And, you know, obviously the natural progression happens. He became so huge, and I started doing my thing. So we didn't see each other a lot, and we weren't like best friends. But when I first came out here, I went and saw Randy Rhoads with Eddie Van Halen.
Love it. Love it. That has to be in a book, Steve.
That has to be in a book, man, because he also, I was living with Barry Levine, and Barry Levine was a big photographer who took all the Kiss photos in the 70s. And I was living with him up in the Hollywood Hills. He was a good friend. And Eddie brought his first album up there on cassette. It wasn't even pressed yet. And he said, "Hey, you guys okay if you want to hear my new album?" And he played that, bro. And Dennis, I'm telling you, we knew right away. We were like, this thing is going to explode. So there was a lot. I got a lot of stories like that. And someday I'd like to write it out.
Please do.
I got a lot of shit to tell.
Please do. We better wind up. Steve, thanks for your time today. The new album Renegades is out November 13th. There's some very cool looking limited edition packs available now. The Aussie Priority Fan Legend bundle looks like a great deal, which includes the album on both CD and vinyl along with a t-shirt. goldenrobotrecords.com is where fans need to visit. I will provide further details at the end of this episode. Steve, every guest on our show gets to choose a song by an Australian band. What would you like to choose and why?
By an Australian band?
Yes.
You know what? We covered Rose Tattoo's song. What was their big song? We covered it. God damn it.
Rock and Roll Outlaw?
Yes, we covered Rock and Roll Outlaw.
You did?
I love that song.
You want to go with that?
We covered it on... It was on our cover album that I did with Phil Lewis in L.A. Guns, and we did Rock and Roll Outlaw, and I just love that song, and I love that band, and hopefully we're thinking about maybe getting over there next year, doing New Zealand, Australia. We would love to do some dates with those guys. Hey, Dennis, I really wanted to tell you real quick, too. Anybody want to know anything about L.A. Guns with me and Kelly, go to laguns.net and they can find everything there with dates and all kinds of crap.
I'll give all those details at the end of the show. Good luck with Renegades and for the remainder of the year.
Thanks so much, Dennis.